Sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business.
Complicated. JD Vance. JD. This guy turned out to be an absolute star. He's a great senator and a real fighter. He's a former Marine and a Yale-educated lawyer. He's a great student. JD knows how important it is to have leaders who put America first. He'll bring the toughness and intellectual firepower we need to champion our movement. He will fight for strong borders, fair trade, jobs, and he will be tough as you can be on crime. A truly MAGA all-star. Make America great again. He's an all-star.
I saw somebody say is, what does JD Vance bring? I don't think he even really brings anything to the table. Because as Joe Biden said, immediately after, Joe Biden said that JD Vance is basically just...
JD Vance, he's a clone of Trump on the issues. A clone of Trump on the issues. So I don't see any difference.
He's a clone of Trump on the issues. That's what Joe Biden says. He's just a clone of Trump on the issues. That's JD Vance. And so when you have that kind of idea, Joe Biden wastes no time. Joe Biden, the man trying to call for unity. Joe Biden, the individual that the individual that claims that, oh, well, we need to tone down the rhetoric. Well, he's just a clone of Trump on the issues. And so I get this question from people. What does he bring? What does JD Vance bring? Well, one, I don't believe JD Vance is a clone of Trump on the issues. What I believe is that JD Vance is planning on being the vice president of Trump. And that means you're not going to come out and show a non-unified front. You're not going to make it seem like you're weak, like there's cracks in your foundation. So here are 5 things that I will say that I believe JD Vance brings to the table that are separate from things that Trump brings to the table. The first is I believe JD Vance is the smartest guy in the room. Look at his resume. Look at the resume of this guy. He has an insane intellect, easily one of the highest IQs in government, being a Yale Law School grad, editor of the Law Review, a very impressive resume. He only got elected to the Senate in the 2022 cycle, and he's already worked his way up and made such a name for himself that it was January 2023 is when he actually got sworn in. So it's been a year and a half that he's been in the Senate, and he's already worked his way up and made such a name for himself that he's at that place, that he's at the place to become a vice president. Man has been elected a senator for all of a year and a half. And now he's a vice presidential candidate. That's less time than Obama was a senator. Along with that, he started a venture capital business in which he was investing in smaller businesses, in people that he saw trying to chase the American dream. And with that, this is a bonus point in here, not one that I was going to bring up really, but because it's not the most important thing that JD Vance brings to the table. But JD Vance has great relationships with mega donors, one of which is Peter Thiel, who was already a Trump donor. So it's not like he really brings Peter Thiel to the table, but Peter Thiel being a very wealthy individual. So JD Vance brings not only his intellect, but money to the table too. Number 2. The second thing JD Vance brings to the table, he will go into the lion's den. And now I will say this isn't necessarily totally different from Trump, but it acts in a different way because JD Vance, like Trump to some extent, thrives on conflict. He's able to go in, but the difference is that while Donald Trump goes into a conflict situation, he goes in and just bulldozes through it. The way JD Vance handles it is a little bit different. There are countless interviews where you can see JD Vance go on to MSNBC, CNN, any place where he knows that the person interviewing him is going to be an adversary. And while he gets attacked, he swiftly and like almost I hate to say snake because it has a negative connotation, but he bobs and weaves his way through the questions and through the BS. And while at the same time tying up his opponent and backing them into a corner like a very intelligent lawyer. And here's just a perfect way or a perfect example to show that. This is CNN just back in May of this year, in which JD Vance does exactly that while he's being questioned by a CNN anchor. Here's this.
Standard. And look, Kaylin, I know you're worried, and I think justifiably so.
This isn't about me,
threats
Senator.
to
I'm
American...
asking questions about you and how you
look,
would feel about this.
I'm trying to answer the question. I appreciate if you let me. We know that there are threats to American democracy. I think the biggest threat to American democracy, Caitlin, is that the Biden administration is trying to prevent Donald Trump from campaigning and taking his case to the American people, even as they hide their own candidate.
That's presiding over that case. The Biden administration is not preventing Donald Trump from campaigning. He just did two campaign events tonight.
This is a really important point, Caitlin. Who is the number 3 person from the Biden Department of Justice who went to work for the New York prosecutor just months before he brought this case against Donald Trump? You can't have people moving from the Biden administration to prosecute Donald Trump in New York and say it has nothing to do with the Biden administration, especially when the judge is the Biden administration donor.
To local DA's offices all the time. That's not that unusual. I mean, you're an attorney, you know that.
It's pretty
you probably
unusual.
Have colleagues who went to Yale with you that did that.
It's pretty unusual.
See, he comes in with facts against it, and he will fight back against the anchor. He does an amazing job of this in countless interviews, and that is just another example of how he can be a great VP. He will be out there defending not only Donald Trump, but the Republican Party on a daily basis. He's not going to be quiet sitting in the back. The third thing is his Midwestern and Appalachian ties. Look, Donald Trump is an East Coast boy through and through. And while he lives in Florida now and seems to have a great base and rally in Florida, he is a New Yorker, a brash New Yorker. Even just by looking at him, JD Vance is much more of a Midwestern individual, much calmer eyes. And while he can be harsh and he can be smart and swift through questioning, he is a Midwesterner. There's a kindness to him. We even just as one of my commenters, great commenter, says his wife seems nice. She does. A nice, small family, a different picture than what Donald Trump poses. And if you guys know anything about what's going on in this election cycle, and if you also look at the Truth Social post from Donald Trump earlier, then we could see, and I could bring it back up actually right here. He even says here, he's fought so brilliantly for American workers and farmers in Pennsylvania, swing state, Michigan, swing state, Wisconsin, swing state, Ohio, kind of up in the air, Minnesota, potential swing state. That is what Donald Trump brought him on for. That is a big part of it, is to win over some of those swing states, some of those Midwestern swing states. And so that's exactly what that's a huge part of it, is his Midwestern ties. That's a huge part of it. And then I want to play with identity a little bit more. Once again, what does he bring to the table that Donald Trump doesn't? Consider this. Donald Trump is not necessarily representative of the American dream. And while he's found a way to relate a lot with Americans, Donald Trump lives one of the least relatable lives from birth to now compared to anybody. He's lived a life of luxury, and while, yes, he's worked, I'm not denying the fact that he's worked hard. He's never really had to go without. JD Vance has. JD Vance had struggled. JD Vance came from difficult beginnings. JD Vance, even in his own book and movie, talks about a time in which he was smoking pot with the bad crowd, and his grandma pulled him out of that. He could have gone a very, very poor route, a route of many Americans that led to further drug addiction and basically just being a good for nothing, ne'er-do-well. But instead, now he's a United States senator and becoming the vice presidential candidate for one of the two major parties in America. Look, he lives an American dream. Humble beginnings to one of the highest offices a person can hold. It's something for people to look up to. And while many people want to play the identity politics game, there's many people out there that are like, oh, well, he should have picked Tim Scott because that's a good representative of the black community. And we should have a black guy because that's the way that identity politics works. That's what we're supposed to do. Well, JD Vance doesn't do that because he's still one of the dreaded, evil, straight white men. He does have an Indian wife and biracial children. And so while I hate playing the identity politics game, he represents the American dream, and his family does too. His family represents a more progressive America than Joe Biden's family does at all. Just saying. Now, number 5, the 5th thing that JD Vance brings to the table that Donald Trump doesn't, that Donald Trump needs, is age. JD Vance is 39. as I mentioned, he was only in the Senate for a year and a half before being able or becoming the vice presidential candidate. While some people might argue that being in the Senate for only a year and a half is not enough time, look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump wasn't in politics really at all, besides the business dealings that he had. So it doesn't really make that much sense. And I believe I was just actually trying to look up the qualifications to become a senator is 30 years, I believe. Yeah, the Constitution sets 3 qualifications for service in the United States Senate, at least 30 years of age. So it's not like he had, I mean, he's 39 now. So it's not like he had a crap ton of time to be a senator before, a little bit, but still. And he was doing a lot of other things previously in his life. He didn't need to necessarily, he was starting a thriving business. He didn't necessarily need to become a senator, but I'm digressing from the point. His age in general is such a focal point of this election cycle, with the majority of Joe Biden's campaign simply just being nothing about policy and instead just having to prove his competency as a candidate and his ability to survive through an election cycle, let alone another 4 years. Age is on the ballot. And I think that there's even something a little bit more to that too, that I'm going to get to in a brief moment. But JD Vance is 39 years old. Donald Trump is 78, so double his age. Joe Biden is 82. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But with that, JD Vance is by far, and I believe Kamala Harris is in like her early 50s. I can Google it right now. Kamala age. 59. Yeah. So I was even being generous when I said in the 40s. Must have been some kind of surgery or something. But she's 59. So by far, JD Vance will be the youngest person in this race. That'll bring in a different demographic. That will hopefully bring in the idea of some younger people, or even some older people that might have just been maybe not even necessarily old, not like your octogenarians or anything, but people that are in the latter years of their career might look at it and say, man, I want to vote for the side that seems to have some longevity to it. Somebody to pass the torch to. And that's what I think is so important. Many people, even myself, were very supportive of Ron DeSantis in the primary. And a big factor of that was his age. If you're a DeSantis voter in the primary, you should be more of a Trump voter today because of the pick of JD Vance on the basis of age. And on the basis that many were saying Trump needs to pass the torch and it needs to be to somebody younger, somebody who can carry out further conservative policy and bring the Republican Party into another generation. JD Vance does exactly that. As a 39-year-old, he has a long career in the public eye, not even necessarily as a public servant. He doesn't even need to be in an elected office for that long. Honestly, I'd be mad if he stayed in an elected office past like 60, because that should not be what we expect of our public servants. He should get in, do what's necessary, and get out. But he serves as a person that could run in 2028 and do well, potentially be the next president of the United States after Donald Trump. As a young individual, there's no worries about his, as of right now, there's the chances of any question regarding his mental faculties, his physical faculties, his abilities, very little. And along with that, I also think that this pick might have come as some level of, and I don't mean to put this crudely, but assassination insurance. Given the circumstances of over the weekend, Donald Trump could have chosen a litany of other people, many of which were much older than JD Vance. JD Vance is a young firebrand, and I will admit, has a lot of comparable qualities to Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump is considering his legacy, instead of choosing a safe option like a Glenn Youngkin, a Tim Scott, a Doug Burgum, somebody who is a moderate that would honestly serve comparably to a Mike Pence, somebody who just kind of sits in the background and does little, that wouldn't be what Trump wants. It wouldn't be what Trump needs. And especially after last Saturday, that wouldn't secure any kind of a legacy for Donald Trump. JD Vance can be Trump Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. But he could also usher in a new wave of the Republican Party, a younger wave of the Republican Party that echoes the populist movement started by Donald Trump, but brings it to a new generation with new ideas, conservative ideas, and a better future for the party. So what does JD Vance bring that Donald Trump needs? Sheer IQ, a new way of dealing with the corrupt mainstream media, the Midwest, the American dream, and a younger generation. The 5 things that JD Vance brings to the table. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm an idiot. As Socrates said, the only thing I know is I know nothing. Let me know in the comments how little I know. And when you're doing that, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think, share it with your friends, all of that fun stuff. I would appreciate it. Check out some of my other videos. I'd really appreciate it. And tune in. Like, subscribe, share, comment, ring that notification bell, all that fun stuff. God bless you. God bless America. And until next time, you've been watching Speechless.